to a telecom conference this spring. I came actually straight from CERN in Geneva. And as you can imagine, at a particle accelerator facility, there aren't many women. So I was a bit excited heading for this conference, thinking finally some women to talk to. But it was worse. I got into this huge conference hall with just thousands of suits walking around. I mean, imagine my disappointment. So tonight I will talk about how I look on the issue of gender diversity and how we all can add to the solution if we want to. As with, for instance, the debate about climate change, I found that the discussion is merely focusing on whether this issue exists or not. But looking at facts, it is clear that we do have global warming as well as gender inequality. I mean, yeah, we have an increase in temperature that is easy to measure, as much as we can count the number of women CEOs on Fortune's 500 companies list, which is 26, by the way, for 2014. So if this issue exists or not, that's not where the debate should be. Instead, we should ask ourselves, do we want to do anything about it? If yes, then why and how? So who am I? Well, I'm Katarina Atteryd, and I recently graduated from KTH in engineering physics with a focus on particle physics. And what I've noticed when working outside the world of academia, as I do now, is that the most valuable knowledge that I take with me is the algorithm of problem solving, which is as applicable on diversity issues as it is on mathematics. As with all big problems, you need to divide them up into smaller pieces and solve them individually. So don't think that I will give you a solution to the universal problem of gender issue, because it doesn't. There is no such solution. But there is a basic problem-solving method, where first you need to identify the problem. And then you need to understand the cause of it. And then finally you can find the solution. This is a trivial method when talking about engineering problems. So how come we usually skip the first two steps when talking about equality issues and go straight to trying to find a solution? You wouldn't do that for other problems, right? So back to this conference hall again with all the thousands of suits walking around. My job at this conference was to talk to representatives from companies around the world about what they did to encourage women to join the telecom industry, which apparently was in big need of it. So I got to talk to 17 representatives from different companies, and none of them did anything in this area. Shocking. But it turned out that actually only one company thought that this was an important issue to begin with. From the rest of the companies, I got answers like, no, we have perfect equality in our country or in our company. Or no, we have found that working with these kinds of issues, you tend to find problems that doesn't exist. So my other job at this conference was to meet with the women employees from these companies that were interviewed. This part of the job got canceled because guess how many women were present? From over 100 representatives at this conference, none of them were women. 0 women. Talk about not having identified the problem, since they had just told me how perfectly equal their companies were. They all thought that they had passed the final step. They had already found the solution, when they hadn't even passed step 1. Except for the last company, who actually thought this was an important issue they wanted to work with. And this company came from Brazil. And the guy there, he told me, hey, Katarina, I mean, It's not weird at all that it's just Sweden and Brazil who wants to do anything about it. I mean, we have such beautiful women. Of course we want them in our workplace. So close. So that leads us to the next step, understanding the origin of the problem. Before I began studying at KTH, I got these weird comments from new acquaintances and other friends when I said I wanted to study physics. Like, really? You know you need to be smart for that, right? So the first time I thought, well, this person doesn't really know me. But after maybe the 10th time, I started thinking like, oh my God, what kind of stupidity signal am I giving away? So I asked my first week at the university, my fellow students, if they had gotten the same kind of question when proclaiming what they wanted to study. But nope, none of them had. So I was convinced it had to do with me, of course. So I started to question my choice of study, and was I really smart? A couple of years later, the same question came up again, but this time at a dinner for female physics students. And I was not at all alone in this experience, as I had thought. Far from it. So then I thought back again at my first week and recalled, like, right, I only asked the guys the first time. And when I've now been out talking to high school students about them entering the engineering field for their future studies, there's sadly always a group of girls that comes up to me and says that maybe studying physics is not for them, even though they want to, because they have already gotten comments of that they need to be smart and that they should probably think again. It took me a couple of years to realize that it had nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with these girls sending out signals of stupidity. It had sadly to do with the fact that I did not look like a typical physicist. And I almost did not study what I wanted because of people telling me this. And I'm not surprised that there are still so few female physics students when people keep on blurting out comments like that. Probably not meaning any harm, but causing it nevertheless. It is clear that telling girls that they need to be smart and that they should think again is one cause to why there are still fewer women engineering students at universities. So here we have identified a problem, that there are fewer female physics students, for example. That's not really hard to identify. But we have also understood that one underlying cause to it is them not looking like a stereotypical physicist, and that people are telling them this. How to solve this, other than talking about it like now? I'm not sure. So you need to help me find a solution for this, okay? Which brings us to the last part. After you have identified the problem and you have understood what's causing it, first then you can try to find a solution. So I was visiting an engineering company here in Sweden, and they were actually 50-50 among employees and among first-level managers. But for some reason, the women managers had a hard time reaching higher levels. So this company, they noticed that it came more natural for the men to get in personal contact with the higher level managers, because they were also men. And with this, they could easier show their interest for advancements. So this company, they arranged an event every year where all the women managers could meet higher level ones. And with this, they evened out the playing field and got 50-50 almost all the way up. They're building it all the way up. Instead of doing a quick fix solution, this company took its time to understand the cause of the problem, which in this case had its origin in communication. And could, because of this, find a more suitable and more sustainable solution that they could motivate to the other employees. But is this enough? In this last example, there's probably multiple causes that adds up to this bigger problem, right? And they identified one of them and solved it. So the next step is to go back again, go through the process all over again, like a continuous loop, until no more problems can be identified. Because I mean, it's so easy to say in this issue, like, hey, we all have the equal right to vote, and we all have the same possibilities for education, etc. But that doesn't mean that we should stop identifying the smaller, maybe more individual issues. Because I mean, how would the world look like if we stopped solving physics problems after we found the solution to Newton's laws of motion, right? So don't stop this loop. The most important thing I want you to take with you from today is, when you have identified an issue like this, don't think that it doesn't apply to you. And don't think that this is something to be solved at higher level. Instead, ask yourself, do you want to do anything about it? If yes, then understand why. And when you have the answers to these two, think, what can you do? Thank you.